All right, guys, so yesterday we had the big Pac-12 meeting. We had the Arizona board also meeting, and we're left here today with the Pac-12, which is currently the Pac-9, still together, hanging on by a thread. We're going to go through this entire article. What's next in college sports conference realignment? There's a very good article coming out yesterday. A lot of stuff. Pac-12 miscalculated the market, got outplayed by a rival, and is now teetering on collapse. And its future hinges on Arizona and Arizona State standing on a knife's edge. That is where the Pac-12 or the Pac-9 currently is at this point on Tuesday morning, as Pac-12 executives met virtually to finally, long at last, see the details of the conference's potential TV deal. No rabbit appeared from the hat, no ace was pulled from a sleeve, and the original thought is that this is a $20 million deal that could potentially go to around 24 or 25 million, depending on what ESPN does. There's escalators within it, but this article also talks about another proposal. You can see at the bottom, the presentation actually featured at least two different proposals, one less lucrative than the other, depending on the amount of subscription-based incentives met, and the addition of outside linear partners such as ESPN and Fox, who would share in broadcasting rights of marquee games. So that is a big-time bombshell. You've got ESPN and Fox coming together and saying, look, you know, it's the Pac-9 at this point, but they still have some teams like a Washington, like an Oregon. I'm sure ESPN and Fox would sign up right now to have a mid-October Saturday night 10:30 game where Oregon hosts Washington. That's a big-time game. That's going to do very well, but it doesn't seem like just one of them wants to really commit to the Big 12 at this point. It would have to be ESPN and Fox, and I think the structure would be 1 week ESPN gets a marquee game, the next week Fox gets a marquee game. All of this, you would think, would be probably really bad for Apple TV. They would be losing their marquee game, but the thought process right now, there's a $20 million deal or somewhere around that could potentially go to 24 or 25 million, or they could be pitching some of these teams in the Pac-12 that we do have a subscription-based deal that could, in theory, allow Pac-12 teams to earn more than the Big 12. Now, will that happen? I highly, highly doubt it. It all comes down to how many subscriptions you actually sell, and the only way we can really judge and look at that is through TV viewership, you know, based on the past few years. Now, if the Pac-12 had a big-time fan base to where they could sell a bunch of subscriptions, and it's the idea of, if you want to watch your favorite team, you need to have the subscription. You know, if you have a fan base like Ohio State, Alabama, even USC, now you're talking. But you also have to remember, even if you're able to generate, you know, $10 or $20 million in subscriptions, that all has to be split evenly. You'd be giving money to Stanford, Washington State, Oregon State, and so forth. And you can see the only team in the top 17 that is going to be part of the Pac-12 is Oregon at number 12. There was no other team there. And then moving on down, you also do have, well, USC's not going to be part of them anymore. The only other team, there was only two teams inside the top 34, I believe. Oh no, there's also Utah at 33, but that does not paint a good picture in terms of, you know, selling subscriptions. You need these fan bases to buy them. 3 teams inside the top 34 in terms of total views last year. That's probably not going to get it done. And if we're being completely honest, you're talking about some of these fan bases like Stanford, California, Oregon State. They're not going to be the biggest draws, and they're really not going to bring much in terms of, you know, added subscriptions based on how big their fan bases are. But I do think the Pac-12 has gotten so desperate at this point, they are pitching. Maybe instead of doing $20 million per year, it might be a little bit less than that, but it's going to be subscription based to where if we meet certain incentives and we're able to sell enough subscriptions, theoretically, we could be on par or at least near in a year-to-year basis what the Big 12 is bringing in, which is around per school 31 to 32 million. Would you be willing to take that chance? I highly doubt it. Again, based off of these numbers we're seeing, they just don't have the teams in the conference that are really going to generate subscription sales outside of maybe Oregon. But that comes down, we're getting really nitpicky with this stuff because I think they're getting so desperate trying to keep Arizona. They know if Arizona leaves, well, you know what? I think the floodgates have already been opened, but if Arizona leaves, that would probably cause Arizona State and then Utah after that, and now you're dealing with 6 teams and possibly trying to merge with the Mountain West just to keep your conference afloat. The only good news there is you would still have Washington and Oregon at that point. And then take a look at this, how the Pac-12 got here. It really is remarkable, and it is sad. USC and UCLA's announcement of their 2024 departure to the Big Ten sent the conference's value tumbling by as much as 40%, according to TV network experts. Despite the loss of the Los Angeles market, the Pac-12 shot high at the beginning of negotiations last summer and fall, according to sources. And yes, that makes complete sense. The Pac-12, it's public knowledge how much money the Big 12 got. It's also knowledge that there were rumors last year some of the Pac-12 teams, the 4 corner schools, were going to defect to the Big 12. So if you're the Pac-12, you have to negotiate, understanding we at least have to be near the Big 12's TV deal or else these teams are going to leave. And it seems like the Big 12 has been negotiating, playing hardball, because they're saying, look, we cannot accept a lesser deal. We will lose our conference. So that's why this entire thing and this negotiation has taken so long. They're saying if we do the 20 million, we're going to lose everyone. And I just think Colorado got tired of waiting, or they saw the final offer and they were like, yeah, this is just not good enough. This seems like it's the Pac-12 theoretically throwing anything at the wall and seeing if it will stick, with the whole idea of, if we sell enough subscriptions, you're going to make more money. We have different thresholds. You can make an extra 4 or 5 or 6 million per year. That seems very unlikely, but I have no estimate on how the subscriptions would work because we've never seen any type of payment structure like this in college football. There's no way to judge. Would they get an extra 1 million, 2 million, 3 million? Would they get nothing extra because maybe it's a complete flop and nobody wants to pay for games, for Pac-12 games where it's like, Washington State versus Oregon State? I don't know. Pac-12 officials hoped it would be worth roughly 3/4 of the value of the recently signed Big Ten TV contract, more than $1 billion a year deal that is expected to eventually distribute over $70 million annually to the members. And that is not even close to what the Pac-12... So that makes complete sense why it's taken this long to work out a TV deal. They were trying to get like 50 million per year for their members without USC and UCLA? How did they think they were going to swing that? Now, I could see the Pac-12 trying to demand that if they still had USC and UCLA, but saying we want 40 or 50 million, that just seems unrealistic, and it makes sense that no one wanted that deal at all. ESPN, Fox, NBC, and CBS had all recently struck partnerships with other conferences, including the SEC, the Big Ten, and the Big 12. And also the ACC has their own network with ESPN. The market has turned against George, who is the Pac-12 commissioner, says one former athletic administrator who remains in the college space. If you can get 80% of what you ask, you usually take it. You don't hope for 110%. In the end, ESPN and Fox showed interest and still do in providing a small window of linear exposure. So that is some news right there. Again, it seems like ESPN and Fox are a little bit non-committal in terms of them saying we want to do a deal directly with the Pac-12. But it's like, yes, we'll team it. We will go in. 1 week ESPN will get a 10:30 game. The next week Fox will get a 10:30 game, and we'll do it like that. Now, if the Pac-12 ends up losing Washington and Oregon, the deal is probably off of the table, let's be honest. Is Apple's guarantee enough In the most recent sign of desperate times, Pac-12 leaders last month approached NBC for at least the third time in the last year, this time with a significantly low offer, and NBC passed on it. Oh, NBC does a great job, and I was very envious of Notre Dame for having their games exclusively on NBC. I'm sure Notre Dame fans probably get tired of it, but I'm very happy that NBC has taken over, I believe, the 7:30 window for the Big Ten. That's great news. There's going to be so many Ohio State games on that window. Same thing with Michigan, Penn State, all of it. So NBC does a great job, and it looks like they're lowering their offer and saying, look, we're going to take it way down. We just have to get on a major network, and NBC still denied them. And then you can see where the Arizona schools stand. On Tuesday afternoon, Arizona had that board meeting, and this is funny. This is why I screenshotted this. It was live streamed, and it lasted less than 40 seconds. The board immediately went into an executive session for a private discussion. So people were trying to watch the live stream. I don't really know how many, but, they immediately go private, or they voted to go private to actually talk about what they were going to do. They don't want to let the public in. A lot of this has to do with politics, possibly Arizona leaving the Pac-12 and going to the Big 12. I'm sure it's very, very complex. How much more money will we make? Does this make sense geographically? Does this make sense for what we're trying to do? They're discussing all of it, and it does seem very likely still, obviously, that Arizona will be going to the Big 12. They're saying now it might take a week or two. So these are the options right now for the Pac-12. These are 3 different options, and I'll give my thoughts on them. The 6 schools add known expansion targets, San Diego State and SMU, as well as other programs in the Mountain West. There are 2 problems here for any Mountain West program to begin playing football next fall. The exit fee is $34 million each. Another problem, replacing Colorado, Arizona State, and Utah with these options likely drops the value of the league considerably, and thus the potential TV deal. So yeah, your conference is dead if you choose that option, especially if you lose Arizona and Arizona State and Utah and add the Mountain West teams. You're going to lose the value of it. And at that point, you're talking about maybe $15 million, $20 million per year at the most. There's 0% chance that Washington and Oregon would remain in the league at that point. Option number 2, the 6 schools merge in some way with another league to form what might be a new conference. Is the 10-team Mountain West interested in a merger to create a 16-team Western League? Would the ACC, long in discussion with the Pac-12 over a partnership, be interested in merging some way? The merge stuff never works. It dilutes values. There's no way that can work. Option number 3, each of the 3 groupings goes its own way. Oregon State and Washington State are sensible additions to the Mountain West. Stanford and Cal, Bay Area academic institutions, could become independents, especially the Cardinal. And then what about Washington and Oregon? And I'll say right here, right now, we would expect Washington and Oregon to go to the Big Ten if that did happen. Now, if the Big Ten really plays hardball, that's where things get weird, and that's why people have been talking about Washington and Oregon possibly going to the Big 12. But I do not think that's going to happen. Either way, there's really not a great option right now for the Pac-12. You just have to hope and kind of hang on for dear life at this point. The Pac-12 board meeting with presidents and ADs about the media rights deal has concluded with no deal being reached. The group is expected to meet again soon. That is according to sources. So yes, we are waiting on Arizona's decision. They met yesterday. The Pac-12 met together, finally discussed the TV deal that has long been rumored. You've got one option, possibly $20 million a year. Maybe it'll escalate to $25 million if they add ESPN and Fox for a late night window game. And then you have another option that's mainly based around subscriptions. And if they sell enough subscription packages to, I guess, college football fans, then theoretically the teams could make a lot of money off of that, but that seems unlikely. They just don't have big enough fan bases in that conference outside of Oregon to really do anything. I mean, you're talking about one team last year, if you look at the year-long views totaled, one team from the current Pac-9 inside the top 32. And then you have Utah at 33, Washington at 34. Some of that is also none of those teams appearing in the playoff, which is going to hurt viewership, but still, it's just not a good scenario. And I don't see how the subscription method is one that you can rely on if you're Utah, if you're Arizona, Arizona State, to where you say, wait, you're only guaranteeing me $18 million a year, and then maybe if we have enough, in terms of subscription money, we could make 27 or 28. It just doesn't seem likely. It seems like they're all weighing their options, and the most logical thing is a defection to the Big 12. But we will see what ends up happening, guys. That is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.